So we're here in Clovis, California, just getting ready to replace a wax ring that's sitting in here. So you can see the moisture down here. That is a steel ring. Of course, it's powder coated, but enough moisture sits on it and it begins to corrode and break through. Hopefully where the bolts are is not damaged. We like to replace the bolts, but you can see the orange, the rust. So we're going to try and pull these out, put new bolts in. If this flange is too damaged to work on, it'll have to be replaced. There's other ways to fix it, but honestly, it's not something that we get into. It becomes very pricey working on these floor flanges. Solid plastic is better. We use those. You've got an offset flange here as well. These are against code. Everybody knows that. I've been plumbing since '87, and the code has not changed since then. And how they get them in here and get it past inspection, I don't know. It still works, but you can see the wax ring here just was completely smashed to pieces. I mean, it's no wonder it wasn't sealing, but you can see the different discoloration around the ring. That's where the water, the darker, that's where the water's been rolling through and causing a problem. But so we're going to get this water sopped up, take a look at the flange a little closer, get some new bolts in, get this cleaned up here too. Get some new bolts in, get some new wax rings in, get this reinstalled, and hopefully everything will go well, and that flange is still in good shape. Then we'll take another video when we're done. So we're still in Clovis, California, and we went ahead and got, the old bolts are out. They're a little corroded, you can probably leave them in there, but we just like to, when we're down here, put in new bolts. We got most of the moisture up out of there that was sitting on the ring. It's hard to, dab it out with the toilet paper and a cloth, but so you can see the problem with this, the white portion. That's the offset flange that's glued to the floor. You can see where it dumps in and immediately hits plastic and then diverts to the right and down to the sewer. So, I mean, not the biggest deal in the world. These are not code. However, I see them used all over, and that's because the plumbing was originally put in the wrong spot before concrete was poured when they were building the home. Nothing I can do about that. New brass bolts, new wax rings. We'll get this bolted down and take it for a test run, see how it goes. And then we will take another video when we're done. So, still here in Clovis, California with the toilet set. So Wilson Home, so all these toilets come straight out of Ferguson. It's the elongated bowl, and I mean, it's in pretty good shape. It's probably 10 years old. You can see there's a bit of, let me see if I can get this off there real quick. You can see there's a bit of corrosion going on in the tank. I'm not sure if there were some in-tank cleaners at one point, but the gaskets, the two bolt gaskets and the fill valve gasket at the bottom, you can see it's like a big mushroom, black mushroom, and then the two bolts. So keep an eye on that. At some point you might have to replace those, and otherwise water starts leaking from the tank through those two holes and then out and down on the floor. So keep an eye on that stuff. And then you can see it was just when I got here, it was really moist on the back of this inside of the tank. All of this was just water from like condensation, really weird. And you can see the hose is discolored. So not sure entirely what's going on. Additionally, this flush lever right here was hitting the lift rod, which controls the float, which activates the water to fill the tank and then also to shut the tank off. So I bent it over just a little bit, and then went ahead and adjusted this chain as well. They had a paper clip in there, and there was a lot of play, so we took a lot of that slack out, just a little bit of slack now, so you should be able to activate this fairly well. I can see some corrosion right here, so it looks like at some point water was spraying out over here, and of course this arm is corroded, so I think something was spraying at some point. Don't really know what or why. All I know is you want to make sure that everything stays nice and dry, whether it's coming from the tank or the bowl or whatever. So we did go ahead and get you a new supply line. Whenever we work on toilets and take the old supply line off, we do not reinstall it, just for insurance purposes, meaning we'd hate to reinstall an old $5 supply line and then it leaks and you got another problem. Then we got to come back out and you're not happy with us and we're not happy with us. So brand new supply line there. It's Fluid Master 3/8 by 7/8 braided stainless steel connector. The toilet does have some movement. We showed you a picture of the flange, and it translates, that it's very flimsy steel, powder coated, new bolts in there, new wax rings, and even though we've got some pretty hard shims, about 1, 2, 3 around this front side, there's still some movement. We don't like to see these move at all, zero movement, but there's very slight movement. It's not a cause for alarm. The main thing that you're doing is supporting downward motion because you're sitting on the toilet. You're not coming in here and pushing it back and forth and rocking on it and dancing on it and standing on it. At least you shouldn't be. So, just be gentle with it. It should be fine. So it's all caulked back in except for the very back. We like to leave this open back here in the event that any water does develop. It comes out and you can see it, as opposed to before it took a long time. It pooled up inside and then it began to bleed through. So that's open in the back for a reason. Let this dry for about 24 hours before you come in here and mop the floor. We cleaned up the best we could. It looks pretty good. Outside of that, this installation is done.